Okay, let's see. Okay, everything looks right. Let me know if something's wrong with the audio or anything like that. I can try to adjust it. So welcome on in, everybody. Um, just a reminder, some of the stuff you're going to hear is a repeat because from last time, some of it's going to be getting into new territory. So you'll start of, last time was pretty much just me explaining stuff last week. Will still be me explaining stuff a little bit. You're going to hear me repeat a few things. There's good reason for that, I think. But then there'll be some stuff that's new, okay? And we'll start transitioning to, maybe today there's a little more explaining to go on. But by next time, we'll pretty much be into the typical class where, you show up, you learn some stuff, and we go from there. But the reality is you are going to hear me repeat certain things, usually the things that I think are most important, because they're also the things, there we go, that people miss, right? So it's understandable. We meet for an hour. I throw a ton of information at you. It's not reality to think that you're all going to retain 100% of the things I say, right? Many of you will retain almost all of what I say, and many of you, or some of you, will miss a lot of what I say, right? And some people, may not even be tuning into the class videos at this point, and then they don't watch them later, and then they miss all this information. But I have to sort of repeat certain things. It's not that I think most of you can't get it. It's just that I repeat things because each time I repeat it, a few more students pick it up and go, oh, that's what he's talking about. And then it results in less confused emails and frantic students at some deadline where they don't realize what's going on. So if you wonder, like, well, he's already said that a few times, why does he keep saying that to us? It's because in reality, no matter how many times I say something, there's always a few students who miss it. And so there's certain things about the class that I have to repeat a bunch of times until students kind of get it. So case in point, between now and the time when your actual survey questions are due, which will be in a couple weeks, right? It's got a few weeks to go before that. You'll hear me mention probably, I bet you, a bunch of times, at least a dozen times, each person in the group has to make their own post. That's how all of these work. So if you're turning in the project, or if you're working on your project, you have to leave a post. What you can't do is just say, oh, well, I'm working with Sarah, and Sarah said I'm in her group, so her posting counts as my posting. No. You'll hear me say this a bunch of times. You have to leave your own posting, right? This doesn't apply yet, but it happened in my other class this weekend, so I'm just pointing it out. This is the kind of thing that you'll hear me repeat, but I kind of have to. If you notice when we click on the directions there, the very first sentence, right? Very first sentence, each group member must leave a posting in order to get credit. Well, in my other stats class this weekend, I got those emails from students. Oh, I got a 0. How come I got a 0? Sarah said that I was in her group when she made her posting. No, the first line, and what you'll hear me say a dozen times at least, is each group member must leave a posting in order to get credit. So that's the kind of stuff, sometimes I have to say it repeatedly. Otherwise, then we have problems afterwards of students saying, wait, why didn't I get credit? What's going on here? So it's usually better to get students to understand what's going on before there's a problem rather than fix everything afterwards, and then people are stressed out and upset and stuff like that. Okay, so when we get to that in a few weeks, just remember, for the projects, you have to leave a posting. If you don't leave a posting, you don't get points. Okay, you'll hear me repeating this, but I mentioned this last week. What you should be doing as a student is coming to the top here of chapter 1, and you just work your way down the whole class. Right? Make sure you're hitting those due dates. Make sure you're getting stuff done in time. And I'm a little understanding here at the beginning where I'm giving you a little bit extra time to get this first chapter done because, I know students are still going around and getting the licensing set up and all that kind of stuff. But that's what I will say is about half of you have the homework set up so far, right? Actually, about half of you have set up the homework. And then about a fourth of you are actually set up with your permanent license. So of the half the class that set up the online homework, half of those people are still on the free licensing, which is okay, but realize that your 2-week free trial ends like in a few days now because we're in week 2 of the class. So make sure that you're getting that actual license set up through the bookstore, because depending on where they have it or not, it might not be a 5-minute thing. So it seems so far, I've heard they have plenty of licenses available, but make sure you're getting that taken care of. What I will say, since I'm pretty generous with these due dates of September 30th, this September 30th due date for this first round of assignments will not be extended. 2.5 weeks is plenty of time to get the first set of homework done, right? So if you go, oh, well, I didn't get my license, so I couldn't do it, that's not really going to work, because you had 2.5 weeks and you could have set up the free version while you were waiting to get your permanent license. So I just want everyone to understand that September 30th, which, by the way, is still 10 days away, there's no extension on that date. 2.5 weeks or two. Well, by the time we get to the 30th, it will be 2.5 weeks or almost 3 weeks to get that taken care of. So, I'm like a broken record sometimes with the don't procrastinate, get it done. Some of you have blasted through this chapter 1 material, and it looks like you're doing good, or you've started it and then you have some questions and you're following up on it. That's great. If you're actually working through chapter 1 right now, good for you. Okay, that means that you're doing the thing that you should be doing. What I will say, I know there was a little I'm not actually sure. When I was asking questions of the class, I sort of didn't get a consistent answer. But I know in my last class, what some people were doing was going through and doing the lessons, because those are pretty easy. You're watching a video and then you're answering some simple questions from the video. That's pretty easy to do. And then the assessments are a little bit more challenging. People were skipping those. I would recommend, if you're doing it, just like I've said, top to bottom. Do the lesson, do the assessment. Do the lesson, do the assessment. Do the lesson, do the assessment. Because if you go through and do 5 lessons, and then a few days later, or a week later, you come back to do the assessments, you might not remember what was in the lesson. The whole point of homework is to reinforce what's in the lesson, and then you remember it. Okay? So that's what I would recommend. Do 1.1 lesson, then 1.1 assessment. 1.2 lesson, 1.2 assessment. That's how I would recommend that you do it. Some of you are doing it. As students, some stuff is up to you, right? I'm just giving you my recommendation. But when a teacher gives a recommendation, you generally, there's like a reason that teacher thinks it should be done that way. It's because I see hundreds and hundreds of students a year go through the statistics class, and I see what techniques work and what techniques don't work for students. So if I'm recommending you do it that way, it's because I watch students succeed in this class and I watch students fail in this class, right? It's not because I'm trying to tell you I don't like the way you study. A lot of studying is up to a student. Some of you listen to music when you do homework. Some of you don't listen to music. Some of you listen to music but shouldn't listen to music. Some of you are checking Instagram every 5 minutes when you're doing your homework, right? There's lots of things that people do, some of them helpful, some of them not helpful in your studying, but I'm not there to decide how you study, but I can tell you what tends to work and what doesn't. So let's start at the top and work down. Keep in mind, and I know this is confusing for students. See how both the lesson and the assessment are worth 13 points? If you look at the way the lesson and assessments are weighted in the actual grade book, assessments essentially worth twice as much. Not exactly, but about twice as much as the lesson. So these 13 points are almost worth 26 points if you're going to think of it that way. But really, you want all of them. If you're going to be successful in the class, you need all, I'm not saying every single point from every single assessment and lesson, but it should be close to that, right? The students who put in the effort in this class, their homework grades are in the 90s. 95 to 100 is very realistic. You might think, oh, that's for the super smart kids or something like that. No, that's not how it works. It's for the kids who put in, and not kids, students who put in the effort. The ones who put in the work to finish the assessments, they end up with really good assessment grades. So the only reason that you would have a low assessment grade in this class is just not putting the work in to finish those assessments, right? Because you have pretty generous due dates, and then you have office hours where you can come talk to me about your questions, and there's a tutor center on campus and they will answer your questions. So and if you get stuck, by all means, if you get stuck on the homework and you go, I don't understand what they want me to do here, just send me a screenshot, right? Send me a screenshot of that problem and say, I'm stuck on this problem and I don't understand what I'm supposed to do here. And then I can probably respond to you and help you with that. But a screenshot is super helpful, right? The whole a picture is worth 1,000 words. If like I'll sometimes get an email from a student that says, you know, I'm working on standard deviation on the homework and I'm confused. Can you help me? It's like, well, standard deviation is like a major topic in statistics. So no, I have no idea what part you're having trouble with on standard deviation. So I don't even know what the part is you're confused on or exactly what your question is. But if you send me a screenshot and say, here's the problem I'm working on the homework, and I don't understand, like I think they want me to do this, but when I do that, I get this number and it keeps telling me I'm wrong. What am I doing wrong? Then I can probably help you because I can see what the problem is, like exactly what problem you're working on, exactly what they want you to do. And I can go, oh, I know this. Students get confused on this problem. You have to do this. And then I can respond to it, right? So just always keep that in mind when you communicate with me. The more information you give me, the better, right? Like before you send me a message, read it and think, will he know what I'm talking about? And I get a lot of messages that are so vague, I literally don't know what the question is, right? Like I'm not exaggerating when I say a student will say, yeah, I'm having trouble with standard deviation. Can you fix that? Or can you tell me what to do or something? And it's like, well, that's, standard deviation is like a whole section almost in the book. What is it you're having trouble with? Is it a specific homework problem? Is it the concept of standard deviation? You have to give me information enough that I can give you a response that will actually answer your question. So I can help you out with that. Okay? So make sure you do that. Let's see, what else was I going to go over? Make sure you're doing these modules at the beginning, right? Get your free access. That's half the class still needs to get their free access. So do that like today, right? The people that are working through chapter 1 right now, you're on a good pace. The ones who haven't started it because you haven't set up the free access yet, you're going to be in a crunch because you're going to be trying to get the homework done by the due date because you're starting later whenever you get access set up. And then, realize there's a chapter 2. And chapter 2's due, that might be right. Then we've got chapter 2 starts, right? And then chapter 3. And then, you're going to have to be able to keep up with those due dates. They keep rolling out. Like the due dates don't wait for you to get set up. So make sure you watch this one to get your free lab access. And then down here to upgrade, which again, it's all free. You do not have to pay for the online license in this class. So there's no reason to be waiting to do this, right? So if I get emails saying, oh, I didn't get this done in time, that's kind of on you that you didn't get it done in time, right? So make sure you do that. Remember, the notebooks are optional. I have some students who love them. Some students just completely ignore them. It's up to you. If you find that it's a helpful, useful organizational tool, I could see it being very useful when you're going through the videos and then you keep these notebooks like in a little binder. It's sort of like a quick reference where you can just go back quickly and go, oh yeah, here's where we talked about standard deviation. Here's what it means. But it's not worth points because I already have between the homework and the project, there's quite a bit to be done in the course. Also, if there's any questions left over from last week, I think I kind of finished talking about everything about the class. But if there's any questions, throw them in chat, and then I can answer those questions when I have a pause or something, when it makes sense to answer those questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions in the chat as long as it's on point, right? As long as you're like, oh, this has to do with roughly what we're talking about. If it seems at all an appropriate time to talk about that topic, go ahead and ask it, okay? Go ahead and ask the question. Then you've got some sections here. These are, you'll be using StatCrunch as your software for the semester. So let me show you StatCrunch. You get StatCrunch with your homework license. So StatCrunch is a great statistical tool. Some of you might use it in the future. Some of you might not. Depending on how much you actually use statistics. But it's a great tool. You get it free with your homework, and you'll get to it through the homework. So just as a quick review, since half of you still need to do this, remember, do not go to Pearson's website directly. You won't be able to set the homework up that way because it'll ask you for a course code, but you don't have a course code. So you go through Canvas, click My Lab and Mastering. Your stuff's here going to look different because you haven't set it up yet. So you'll just click this, go in, set up your account. You'll click the 14-day free trial. right? And remember, this is all described right here in the Get My Lab Access. All you have to do is click this, and it walks you through with screenshots what it is you're supposed to do to get your free access, right? And then after that, you'll just follow this one down here to get your full access. And remember, the full access, you can just pay for it if you want. But right now, as far as I've heard, the bookstore still has licenses. And this semester, the school is giving those licenses to you for free. So why not, right? That also helps, I think, and hopefully no one's going to fail this class, but I think if you have it set up now and you fail the class and you retake it again next semester, I think you still get to use that same license. They always change the rules around, but usually you do. So that means you even have it free for next semester if you don't pass the class. Hopefully everyone passes and we get that. So, okay, so make sure you're doing those. I really need in the next few days, in order for this class to be moving forward successfully, you need to get that done. And I know you might be thinking, well, it's pretty early. I can still catch up. You don't want to play catch up in this class. You want to stay caught up, right, as much as possible. So get those done. Browse the syllabus if you haven't yet. We've got StatCrunch. So here's what StatCrunch looks like. So we've got the StatCrunch page, right? Go open StatCrunch. And it kind of looks like an Excel spreadsheet or something, or what is it? Google Sheets, I think, is the one that's like a spreadsheet. It's a little different because it's designed specifically for statistics. So you can do some of this stuff in Excel. Like Excel has some limited statistical capabilities, but some of their stat stuff is like actually really weird. The way they do things, I forget, and I haven't used it in like 10 years, but I remember using it like 10 years ago, and some of their stuff was actually just wrong. Like the way it constructed certain histograms and stuff was just incorrect. I don't know if it's different now, but StatCrunch is going to have all of this stuff for crunching numbers for you. It's great, right? That means that, again, this class won't be focused on number crunching. It will be focused on understanding, right? Another one of those things I got to throw in there because students are always confused the first 2 weeks. I have to remind you, we only meet for 40% or less than the time that we would if we were on ground, which means I only have 40% as long to explain things to you. So like, remember, I'll get an email where a student says, oh, there's like this thing, but you never talked about it in class, right? There's going to be a lot of things I never talk about in class because there just isn't time. Right? I can't talk 2.5 times faster than I would if we were in class and expect everyone to understand it. So that's why it's really important you follow those lessons. I'll be throwing in stuff that is important for you to move successfully through the course, a lot of conceptual explanations, but that's going to be a regular thing where you go, oh, he didn't talk about this in class. I'm talking about the stuff that I think is most important for you to have a deep explanation of, right? But a lot of the stuff you're going to be learning from those videos. So when we come in here, basically what you're going to have is columns here. So let's say, let's look at some ages maybe. Maybe let's just pretend that we are taking we polled the class, and this is the age of people in the classroom. And this, you guys will actually do this because almost always on the survey questions, there's always a few people that ask, what is your age? Right? So let's, 5 doesn't make sense. That's ridiculous. We have young students, but not that young. Let's go 18, right? So this could be some sample data right here. See how the data is in a column? This could be some sample data. So then we can do stuff with it. I can go into stats and I can have it calculate stuff for me. Yes, I want you to calculate the ages, and then we get the mean, standard deviation, median, range. These are all things you're going to be learning about in those videos. So you can use this StatCrunch to do calculations for you. In fact, oftentimes in the problem, there's a little blue link, and you click it, and a pop-up will show up that shows the whole data set. And then inside of that, there's a link to open it in StatCrunch, and you'll see all your data show up in a column right here. And then you can use all these tools to do the work. Right? In my other class, I helped a student with that the other day. They were confused about how to do it, and it was basically impossible to do the problem if you weren't in StatCrunch. And as soon as you open it up in StatCrunch, it was like trivially easy because you just go, oh, here, calculate this for me, and then it did. So keep an eye out for that. When you can link into StatCrunch, it's very convenient. Things like histograms, all this kind of stuff is going to be easy. Oops. And I'll show you how to use this more in depth, but you can see how fast that was for me to make a histogram. Now, this isn't quite a fully legit histogram yet. I don't have my good, like this says VAR1. I should label that with something like ages, or age of students at Ventura College stats class or something like that. But see how quickly it does this work for us? So you need to really focus on interpreting. What does this mean? And you don't have the tools yet to do that because we haven't talked about anything, but I'll be mentioning them. Those videos in class will be mentioning them, and you'll pick up the information about how to do these things. Okay, so that's what your StatCrunch will look like. I forget exactly when they start showing up. I know by chapter 2 you start seeing the stuff that you can do in StatCrunch, but I forget how much of it's not every single problem opens in StatCrunch because some of it doesn't make sense for it to open in StatCrunch, but some of it does. So just look for that little blue link, right? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so assume that means we can plow ahead. Let me just take a second to see if there was anything else I wanted to mention. I don't think so. So, okay, so what I will say, so this project groups, hopefully working on that, right? Hopefully getting in there and forming your groups that you're going to create for the class. So that's due the 25th. So you have 5 more days to do it. 5 more days to get that done. But basically, you're just trying to find a group of 1, 2, or 3 people that you think are going to be able to work well together. You're basically a support for each other. You're each going to be doing your own group, but some of the things that we do are very confusing, especially since we're not in the classroom where you can just, normally many of you would just walk up to me and go, I'm not quite sure. I'm working on this part of my project. I'm not really sure. What can I do about it? I'm confused. And then I would go, oh, I see what you're doing. Do this differently. Do it like this. And you go, oh, okay, thanks. I see now. But there's less of that because we don't meet in the classroom, and students just the reality is students are not as forthcoming to come ask questions when we're not in the classroom, right? So it's really helpful. I think there's less maybe it feels less intimidating if you get in a good group where everyone's like got a good attitude and you're all trying to just get your work done and everyone's working hard. It basically becomes a study group, which is really great because then you can just go in there and go, did anyone else have problem with this question on the homework? People go, oh yeah, I had problems with that, but then I figured it out. Here's what you need to do, right? You want to be that support group for everyone. So basically, you're just trying to find a group of people that you think you can work well with for the rest of the semester. And I know it's hard because you don't, we're not really doing like all the icebreakers, which are kind of, I tend to find kind of annoying in class anyways, and students tend to find them annoying. But, you don't know each other. Normally, you'd all be chatting with each other a little bit before class starts, but that doesn't happen on Zoom in the same way that it does if you're sitting there in a classroom, right? It's just socially a little different. So make sure you get in here. Try to get your groups together, okay? Let's see. Yeah, so good question. Nope, so this is one of the easiest assignments. You're just going to go in. Basically, what I'm going to do when I grade this one, because I'm not going to read every single one of these like in depth. I'm just either you formed a group or you decided to be a group of 1. If you came in here and you left a posting in here, you're going to get credit. So it's like the easiest 10 points of the entire semester. You come in here, say this, and then I just leave it up to you to manage your groups. I'm not going to like note who's in which group, or I'm not going to keep track of it, and I'm certainly not going to follow like any drama that happens in groups, which is rare. But sometimes, you'll get a group that decides one person isn't working hard, or you've had your group split because sometimes it's hard. Maybe you're in a group of 3 people. One person's not working very hard, and then the second person has to drop the course because they're getting overwhelmed for whatever reason, COVID or family or whatever. They're getting overwhelmed, and then you maybe don't want to be in that person that you think is working very hard. Then you just become your own group, right? I would encourage you to let people know you're not working with them anymore if you're not going to. But You're not getting married to people. There's no like long-term commitment. It's sort of a group that's like, yeah, we're going to get together and we're going to answer each other's questions and help each other a little bit so that we all can move forward with the project successfully. But you don't have to like officially let me know what your group is as long as you do. And I want to make that clear. Like you're not forced to stay in a group until the end of the semester. If for whatever reason someone in the group is making you uncomfortable, or someone in the group is not pulling their weight, or whatever's going on, people are free to change their group configuration, right? I'm not here to the groups are not formed to make things harder for you or unpleasant or stressful. They're here to be a support and help you move through the class successfully. So if you're in a group where someone says stuff that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to be in that group anymore. You can look for a different group or form your own group of one person or whatever it is that you want to do. Okay. By no means do I want someone to be in a situation that makes them makes the class unpleasant. Okay. And then just also be aware, if you're someone who isn't pulling your weight, the group could decide that they don't want to work with you anymore. And then now you've become a group of one person, right? And at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter too much because you're all turning in your own assignment, right? Back to the thing I said a little earlier. You each have to leave your own, like you're each doing your own project, right? The groups are to get together and talk to each other and go, I don't know if I did my histogram right. And then you guys can all talk about it. Guys and ladies and everybody can talk about it and try to figure out a good way to do it, right? Otherwise, trying to do this stuff on your own, totally navigate it all on your own, you have to be a pretty intense student to be able to do all of this completely on your own well, because there's usually parts where people get confused, okay? So let's see. Right. So make sure you're doing that. You got about 5 days to get that done. When it's done, I go through award points, and you'll either have those or not. There's really no reason to need an extension here. And people go, oh, I didn't get that done yet. There's really no reason because it was started last week. You've still got 5 more days. All you have to do is come in and like join a group with somebody. That's all you got to do. Okay. But we need those groups formed because then what's going to happen is as we move through the first chapters, you're all going to start coming up with your survey questions, right? And I'll redo this. I'll repost this. But then you're going to start coming up with your survey questions. I'll probably start talking about that. Let's see. September 30th, October 10th. Yeah, probably start talking about that next time a little bit. As of yet, you're not really sure what your good survey questions are going to be. So the reality is it's actually good if some of you are into chapter 2 so you'll understand what's going on. And I know there's that October 10th due date out there and you think, oh, that's a long ways away. But remember, at the beginning, I'm generous with the due dates because I know people are still setting up the homework. But it doesn't mean that you like get a free pass. You still should be progressing through these, okay? All right, so what is statistics? Also, feel free to throw more questions in the chats if you need to. So what is statistics? Statistics, you have to remember, is a little bit different than mathematics. And mathematics, and there's all areas of mathematics, but the area of mathematics that most of you have been exposed to, which is algebra and maybe some calculus, is pretty much, calculus is sort of an extension of algebra. It's this pretty similar area of mathematics. Generally, you have a question, you answer it, and you usually get one answer. Maybe there's 2 answers. Maybe sometimes you get more, but usually there's 1 or 2 answers, and then you check your answer and you go, yep, that's it. That's the whole story. X equals 7. That's what I need to know, is that X equals 7. With statistics, things are much more complicated. They're much more messy. There is not always an exact, perfect, correct way to do things. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. When you set up your histograms, there might be like 3 pretty good ways of setting up a histogram for the same data set. Now, there's a whole lot of really bad ways of setting up histograms, but there might be like 3 different good choices, and you can't decide between them. Maybe you use 2 of them. Maybe you use 3 of them, right? There isn't necessarily a right and wrong here. Well, there's a lot of wrongs, but sometimes there might be more than one right way of doing it is what I'm getting at. So that's hard for some students in statistics because a lot of you did well in math by memorizing everything. You're just like, okay, you give me a technique. Okay, you just taught me factor by grouping. I'm going to do 20 of these. Okay, I have the technique memorized. Any factor by grouping you throw in front of me, I don't even have to think about it. My brain just goes into like automatic mode, and I can factor by grouping the problem that you want me to do, right? Statistics doesn't work that way because there's always a level of critical thinking in statistics. You can't just automatically move ahead. You have to slow down and understand what you're dealing with, and then ask yourself, what's the best way for me to use this tool, right? And two people doing the same survey question might present that question in different ways, and they both might be good ways of doing it. Basically, what we're doing in statistics is we're trying to form a narrative. We're trying to form a story about data and explain, why is this connection the way that it is? Or is the connection meaningless, right? So as human beings, our brains do this, right? When we were running around, when we were still evolving, and we were running around before we formed civilizations, your brain's ability to immediately see patterns would save your life, right? If you're walking through the jungle and all of a sudden you realize that part of what you're looking at is actually the stripes of a tiger, and your brain just recognized those stripes, that may have saved your life. The sooner you see that tiger, the less likely you are to be killed by the tiger, right? So our brains are really good at seeing patterns and immediately jumping to conclusions, because it's better to, what's the better scenario? You walk along, your brain sees the stripes of a tiger, or what looks like the stripes of a tiger, and ignores it, and then you end up walking too close and the tiger eats you. Or you're walking along, right? You may have had this kind of experience if you're out in nature. You're walking along, and all of a sudden your brain thinks it sees something dangerous, and you panic for a second, and then you look and go, oh, that's just an old broken tree stump. That's not a wolf over there. That's a broken down tree stump, but it's kind of dark out. It's not, it's kind of twilight, and the shadows were weird, and my brain thought that tree stump was a coyote or something, right? But it's from a survival standpoint, it's better for your brain to think that stump was a coyote and be wrong than to not recognize that something's a tiger and then you get eaten. All right. So our brains are good at jumping to patterns that don't really exist. Like the coyote with the shadow and the stump it wasn't really a coyote. It didn't exist, but it didn't kill you that you didn't recognize that. If you don't recognize the tiger, it might kill you. Right? So that's just a thing that our brains do. They jump to patterns. So part of statistics is recognizing, is this pattern real, or is it just random chance, or is there actually something going on here? Right? These are the kind of things you have to think about. Just because, like, we'll have all these tools that will spit out a number. When you're using StatCrunch, it'll spit out a p-value or spit out a confidence interval or something like this. But you have to be able to recognize, like, is this statistically meaningful? Right? Like I was driving around yesterday running some errands in town, and I had the radio on, and they had like the football game on. And I'm going to like change the facts a little bit to make it a little bit more exaggerated. But they were talking about like, okay, so this specific team has lost game 3 of the season 4 years in a row. Now, that's the kind of question that you might use statistics to investigate. Why is our team keep losing game 3? And then you might wonder, like, well, is that even that much of a pattern to lose game 3 4 years in a row? Well, when you get to the section on probability, you'll be able to calculate how unlikely that is that you would win. You would lose 4 games in a row, 4 game 3s in a row, right? Because, like, imagine flipping a coin. When you flip a coin, you expect what? You expect the coin to come up heads about half the time and tails about half the time. But that doesn't always happen. If you sat down and you flipped a coin and you got 4 tails in a row, would you be like amazed? No. You'd go, okay, I got 4 tails in a row, but that's not like amazing, right? So you have to sort of, like, what is the way that we can recognize if events are, like how unusual an event is? We will develop tools for doing that. So we can ask ourselves, is it really a big deal that we've lost game 3 4 times in a row? Obviously, we'd rather win game 3, but is it like that shocking from a probability standpoint or anything? The answer is it's not that outrageous, right? Maybe if you lost 10 game 3s in a row, you'd start to go, is something going on here? But 4 is probably not that outrageous. Now, when you look at the system, there could be a reason. So you might look statistically and go, yeah, there's a good reason why we keep losing game 3, so let's fix that reason. Let's change things. But also you might go, it's just chance. Right? It's just when you deal with lots of numbers, patterns are going to show up that aren't meaningful For instance, you start to think about it. Why is it that we would always lose game threes? If you're convinced that your team is bad at winning game threes, why is that? Well, do we play the same team always on game three? No, it's a different team every season. Say you had a system where like your team always played the previous champion for game three. That would be a good explanation. Well, the reason we always lose game three is because game three is always against last year's champion. So we're playing like the best team. So that's why we lose it. Then you'd have an explanation. You'd go, oh, okay, that explains things. But you get this a lot when you listen to stats on sports, and then also when you listen to stats on the news, because we have sports channels and we have news channels, and they have 24 hours to fill. So they end up just talking about anything they can. And when you know statistics, you'll hear a significant portion of the time, they'll throw out statistics and you go, that means nothing. Like, that's meaningless. They're just, they're looking for words to fill the air and keep people busy. So the reality is, if you sit down and break it down, there's probably not a good reason why your team keeps losing game three. It's probably just random chance. You just happen to lose game three 4 years in a row, right? And then next year, maybe you'll win it, maybe you'll lose it. Who knows? But so you want to stop and always think about, like, is this statistics that I'm doing? I can crunch the numbers, but like, is this meaningful? Do I think there's a good reason here? And that's what you're trying to do with statistics, is you come up with that narrative that says why a certain thing is happening. That's what we're trying to do with statistics. Try to give an explanation, right? So for instance, and cause and effect is another big one. Most students come into statistics always thinking cause and effect, and you'll hear this. You hear the politicians do this all the time, right? Both sides. On the, they'll state a statistic and they'll say, therefore, this thing causes this other thing. In statistics, we rarely can prove causation, because rarely is there causation. We'll learn a word called correlation. Correlation means two things are related, but are not necessarily caused by one thing. Like A doesn't necessarily cause B. Most of the time in reality, you might have three things that cause a third thing, right? Like your grade in this class isn't just the result of one thing, right? It's a result of your homework assignments, right? It's a result of your project score. It's a result of your attendance. It's a result of your willingness to participate in groups. It's a result of you coming to me and getting help when you have questions. See how there's lots of things that cause your grade? Sure, you could say, well, my grade went down because my project went down, but there's like 5 or 6 different things that affect your grade. That's the kind of thinking we want to do in statistics. Yes, this one thing has an effect, but so do these other things. And we want to be able to describe that. We want to come up with a narrative for that and make a description for that kind of statistics. There's like famous cases that get thrown out. You can make a strong connection between shark attacks and ice cream sales. Right? I don't think I talked about this in this class yet. When ice cream sales go up, so do shark attacks. When shark attacks go up, so do ice cream sales. You can find a very strong connection. But I think all of us realize it would be ridiculous to say that eating ice cream causes a shark attack, or that if you get a shark attacked by a shark, you suddenly get the urge to go eat ice cream. That's ridiculous. So then what's the connection here? Why are these variables so closely related to each other? Well, they both happen in the summer, right? Very few people get attacked by sharks in the winter because they're not going in the ocean, and it's very difficult to get attacked by a shark if you don't go in the ocean. Also, ice cream sales go up in the summer when it's hot. So both of those things are related to temperature. So if we look at temperature, we can say, oh, yeah, temperature is that missing connection between the ice cream sales and the sharks. There's no direct link between ice cream sales and shark. They both result from temperature. That's what we call a confounding variable or a hidden variable. You didn't think about temperature when you're connecting these things, but actually temperature is the whole story, right? There's also, you can come up with lots of ones like you can draw a connection between life expectancy and the number of automobiles that you own. And at first you'd go, that's like, if you're thinking about it wrong, if you're thinking about it in terms of cause and effect, you go, oh, okay, well, that means I should go out and buy a couple more cars because then that's going to cause me to live longer, right? No, that's ridiculous. Having another car parked in front of your house is not going to help you live longer, but there is a connection between life expectancy and automobiles. Anybody know what it is? Anybody guess? Usually somebody guesses it. Yeah, exactly. Someone nailed it. Money, right? It's about money. People who have money have better health insurance. People with better health insurance live longer. People with more money have more vehicles, right? So again, you have that. It would be a silly situation to automatically assume that one of these things is causing the other. There's really another variable hidden in there, and we have to uncover that. That's part of what we do in statistics, is getting down to it and saying, I think part of the story is buried here. Let's dig down and figure out what's going on. That's what you want. If you can make those kinds of connections on your project, and you do all the things you're supposed to do, probably get an A on your project, right? If you can do all the things that we do throughout the semester, and then you can make solid conclusions like we just talked about, that's like an A project right there. Okay. Right. So we've got that. So keep that in mind when you're going through things. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to uncover the narrative. We want to tell a story about our data and then be able to make a convincing argument using the tools of statistics to convince someone else. No, don't go buy that car because you think you're going to live longer. What you need to do is find a way to get some more money. Then you're going to live longer, right? Then we can make smart actions. We can take smart actions rather than, a lot of times politicians, they'll use a statistic incorrectly to say, therefore we have to do this over here. And actually you go, that won't do what you think it's going to do. But they're using statistics to justify that thing. So as we do statistics, right, you've got your introduction to the study of statistics. I'm going to walk you through that. Then we've got observational studies and designed experiments. What are the differences between those? Basically, an observational study is where you just observe something happening, but you don't interfere with it. You don't change what is occurring. You're like kind of able to be a perfect observer. And, depending on what class you're in, people will argue whether this is possible or not. A physicist will tell you it's impossible to observe something without changing the thing. But for what we're doing in statistics, we're dealing with large scale stuff. We're not on the, atomic level. There are things that we can observe and shouldn't really be changing them. So for instance, I went to a talk once at a convention where the person went out and the person was convinced, and this is backed up in most cities that have these red light cameras. It's pretty sketchy. If you dig into what's actually happening with those red light cameras, there's some very sketchy stuff going on because you think the point of a red light camera is for safety, right? But it turns out in most places, the red light cameras really are there as a revenue generation tool. They create tickets to pay for things. And you might say, well, that sounds jaded. How can you make that claim that it's really about, in most places, it's about money generation and not safety? And that's the talk that I went to. This guy spent an hour talking about the statistical research that he did on the red light cameras in his city, and it was pretty convincing. Yeah, right. So one of the things he did, he went around to wherever there was red light cameras in his city, and he timed the yellow lights. Right. Then he went around to all the parts of the city where there weren't red light cameras, and he timed the yellow lights. So, and this happens in many, many cities. What happens is that the red light cameras, guess what they do? They shorten the yellow light. So it's a fraction of a second shorter. It's a half a second shorter, which sounds like almost nothing, right? But you know how it is when you're in that zone, when you get caught at a light and the light changes to yellow and you have to make that decision. Ooh, do I gas it and go through, or do I stop and slow down? Which should I do? Well, if that yellow light's half a second shorter, and you're not used to the lights in your, it's a little different than the other lights in your neighborhood, you might not notice that half a second difference, but people are going to go, oh, no, I have time. I should go through the intersection, and then they get the red light, right? Or they don't stop in time or whatever. So he gave evidence pretty convincingly using statistics. Yes, what they do when they put in a red light camera most of the time is they shorten the yellow light on that light because it's going to result in more red lights, which will result in more tickets. So it's pretty hard to make an argument that shortening yellow lights is for safety. Right, the yellow light duration. It's pretty hard to go, oh yeah, let's shorten the yellow light. That's going to make things safer. No, it's for revenue, right? You give out more tickets that way. So that's an observational study. He went in and he just stood there on the sidewalk and he timed them. He had a stopwatch and he timed all these yellow and red lights and he figured out how long they were, and he came up with convincing evidence that the city's doing some sketchy stuff here, right? That's one way we can collect data. Another way is with an experiment. Now, an experiment is where you actually change the outcome of some event, but you keep track of it. So, for instance, I take half the class. Let's just say there's a new vaccine. We'll call it vaccine X, okay? I take the class. I break you up into two groups. Half of you will get the vaccine X, and half of you will get the placebo, right? We just did something. We just changed an outcome because we gave you a vaccine, right? That's changing. That's changing the makeup of your body and everything like that. We actually made a change. So that would be called an experiment. So the easiest kind of rule of thumb, this isn't perfect, but the rule of thumb to remember between a study and an experiment is, did you just watch things and not participate or change anything? Or did you actually change the outcome of events in some way? And that will indicate to you whether you have a study or an experiment, right? Kind of a loose way of doing it, but more or less. And we only have a couple minutes left. So I'll probably talk about, I'll pick up here next time as well. But random is one of the most important words in statistics. If you are not doing things in a random manner when you collect information, then you are probably doing it poorly. It's one reason that our data that we collect in this class is not going to be like scientifically sound. We're going through these projects that you're working on as a learning experiment, and I think it's really good. But you should also understand it's not like we can take these results and publish them, because we didn't use any kind of randomization when we decided who was going to be sampled, who was going to take the survey. Right? We chose who was going to take the survey. It's people that are in an online statistics course at 8 a.m. in the morning. So you're selecting for a very specific group of people. It's people who take classes in the morning, people who take online classes, people who take statistics. And that could be interesting, but we wouldn't expect that to be a representation of the school as a whole. We wouldn't expect people in this class, this online class, to have the same opinions as someone who's taking the class on ground at night. Oh, and by the way, it's a ceramics class, not a statistics class. You would expect those people possibly to have different opinions because they're a different group of people, right? You were all collected as a group, a class, because you had the same thing in common, this statistics. You all needed a statistics class, and you all wanted to take it in the morning in an online class. Right? So that means that you all share certain characteristics, which means you don't necessarily reflect the other students on campus, right? And this can go, this is why online polls are useless. When you see Fox News or MSNBC and they've conducted their own poll on their website, it's literally meaningless. It means nothing at all, because if you take, put the question out there, say before the election, who do you think should be president, Donald Trump or Joe Biden? Fox News puts that on their website. MSNBC puts that on their website. You're going to get very different answers because you're asking different people. And what happened there? There was no randomization, right? You selected, we're selecting the Fox News people to take this question. And then separately, we're going to select the MSNBC people to answer the same question. You've selected your groups rather than sampling. So randomization is huge. It's one of the most important ideas in statistics. It's just that we don't have a large enough sample size to draw from that we can use randomization. But, a good way to do it, like if we were, one good thing to do when we decided this, you'll hear me give the example of the smoking ban because I'm on the academic senate. And a few years ago, we had this decision. Well, the president ended up making the decision, but academics said it had a recommendation in it. What should we do about smoking on campus? Should it be completely tobacco or nicotine free? Should we have, because we used to have spots where there were like 4 spots where you could go smoke on campus. Now there isn't. They got rid of all those spots. But what if we just took a group of non-smokers and asked them, well, what do you think? Should there be any smoking spots on campus? They're probably going to say, probably not. And what if you ask the smokers? Do you think there should be 5 spots on campus where you can go smoke? Probably going to be a lot of yeses. So you don't want to pick those groups. What you want to do is randomize. Pick from the 10,900 numbers, that ID numbers we have for students. Pick 200 of them at random and then ask those people, because then what you're going to get is you're going to get some smokers, you're going to get some non-smokers, you're going to get some people who smoke, sometimes there's people who smoke like 5 cigarettes a year or something if they happen to be out partying or something. You're going to get those kinds of people in there. You're going to get a whole range of people, and your feedback is going to be much more representational to the school as a whole. So when possible, we want to input randomization into the process, right? It's very helpful. Okay, and with that, I'm out of time, so I will continue next time. I'll talk more about these things. We'll continue from there. So the things you should be working on right now. Those of you who have not set up the homework, get the homework set up, right? Remember, there's the directions right here. Get my lab access. Those of you who have set up the free access but not the permanent license, follow this one. Go get your full lab access from the bookstore. Do it now so you don't have a gap where you can't work on the homework. That's going to put you behind, and then you're not going to be able to understand what I'm talking about in class. So get that done. I'd really like to see those numbers up higher by Wednesday. It's in your best interest to get it done. The sooner you get it done, the better. And then those of you who have done those 2 things, just keep working through the chapter 1 stuff. And I know you go, I got 10 more days to do it. Technically you do, but if you finish this in the next few days, that means you can jump right into the next stuff. And if you can get a little bit ahead in this class, that's going to mean you're going to have less at the end of the semester when other people are stressed out and your other classes are ramping up, you'll have a little bit less to do. So it's kind of up to you how you want to handle that. But please, whatever stage I just mentioned that you're at, try to move forward in that so that we can get everyone ready to move forward successfully, right? Only about half the class right now is even able to access their homework, so please get in there and remedy that. Okay, as always, I'm going to shut down the YouTube stream. Anyone who wants to talk to me in Zoom, come talk to me in Zoom, and I'll answer whatever questions you have. Okay? All right, thanks, everybody.